Hi everybody, Coach Jorge Capestany here, USPTA Master Professional and PTR Master Professional. And if you don't know me, I'm a 30-plus year tennis teaching pro, as well as a parent of a child that plays college tennis. And my wife, Marty, is also a teaching pro as well. So we're all into it with families for tennis. So this video is dedicated to parents, and I've had many great parents in my life for the kids I've coached. I've had some parents that needed some coaching, but I want to help you because I don't think I've ever seen a video that tells parents how they should watch their kids play tennis. And my belief is if you don't get any training on that, often the default position and what you tend to do is actually detrimental and not helpful. So this video, I'm going to call it How to Watch Your Kids Play Tennis. We're going to cover several different points. The first of these being why tennis is so tough. So I've counseled many parents because I have lots of kids in my past. I've had several really good players and a lot of players are just rec players. And one of the questions that parents ask me all the time is, what's the big deal with my kid? He loses a tennis match and his whole life is crazy. Tennis is very tough, and maybe if you play, you might know these, but maybe if you don't play, you don't know these, or maybe you don't even recognize these. But let me list some of the reasons why tennis is tough, and that'll help you maybe understand your kid better. Number one, our sport has no timeouts. Unlike any other sport where you kind of regroup, tennis, there's no timeouts. Tennis also has no substitutes. If you're really struggling, and you're double faulting, and you're making a fool of yourself, and you double faulted 6 times in a row, there's no one there that can sit in. You're out there by yourself. This doesn't matter if you're 10 years old or 18 years old or 35 years old. There's no substitutes. There's no timeout substitute. There's also no coaching for the most part in our sport. Think of every other sport, even at the professional level, there's constant coaching. Not only is it allowed, but it's constant and continual. There's always this feedback that you can get. There's no time limit in our sport, so a match could go an hour, it could go 4 hours. We've seen them go as long as 6 hours, so you have that stress. It's a sport that's played outside, so sometimes you can get really hot conditions, windy conditions, all kinds of things. One of the bigger ones is that your very opponent is the person who's your referee. He's calling, the guy you're trying to beat and working hard to beat is actually the person calling your shots in and out. So just imagine that. That's something that people don't appreciate. How would that work out in a Little League game if you went to a 12-year-old Little League game and the batter who's trying to hit the ball gets to call balls and strikes for the pitcher that's throwing it? I think pretty clear that would not go so well. So that's a huge responsibility in the hands of sometimes some young kids. So there's many other things, like the pressure, because it can be an expensive sport. But that's one thing you need to understand. Tennis is a tough sport, even though it's kind of a regal sport and you wouldn't think of it as a physically tough sport. It's very tough emotionally. The second thing is parents have to avoid the trap. Kids love to compete, and parents too often like to compare. Research shows that the worst thing you can do with your kid is compare them, especially to friends. So if I have my daughter Sally, and Sally comes in and like, well, how come you're not as good as Beatrice there? She's, you started in the same class and Beatrice is a friend. This is one of the crazy turnoffs for tennis. Now, we know that 70% of the kids that play youth sports in America, not just tennis, but 70% of them drop out by the time they're 13. So we have an epidemic problem in youth sports, and the problem is not the youth, it's the adults in the youth sport. So I think I can talk to this because I've been in the front seat to some really great tennis parenting and some really bad tennis parenting. So, and as a tennis parent myself, I've tried to do things right, and I think I've done pretty well, and I learned some things along the way. The third point is, we often tell kids that when they're performing, there's really 2 performances. During the point, when the point's running around, you're performing, you're hustling, and trying to get balls back. But as soon as that point ends, and now you have the between point time, we ask the kids to perform again. That's another performance. What that means is, we don't want, even though they might be feeling angry, we don't want to show them body posture that shows anger. We don't want to show them frustration. We don't want to be whiny. We don't want to be complaining. We expect even a 10-year-old to, even though he has those feelings, to hold himself properly and do a good body posture. So let me ask you this. A lot of times on the sidelines is when the parents kind of blow it. So you're watching a child, and I've seen this happen as recently as last week, and you might be watching, and then maybe it's the mom, maybe it's the dad, but with every error, it's like, oh my gosh, you're so, and you watch and they double fall, I can't believe it, and the body posture on the parent is kaput. It's just very, very poorly. So I ask you, I beg you, to think about that as a performance. When you are playing, or when your child is playing, you are performing. You might think, performing, I'm just here to watch. But your child will pick up on these things. It's super important that you, as soon as the competition starts for them, it starts for you. Now, as a parent, I've watched tons of close matches from my daughter. She plays college tennis now. And there's many times where I was really frustrated or really nervous, but I always look cool and calm on the outside. I would chill out. I'd always make friends with the other parents. I wanted her to look over and glance at me and see that, hey, Dad's chill out. He's not like all agitated. So that's probably the biggest thing I can tell parents. Please look at it as a performance. The next thing is I want to talk about is what kids report. One of the worst times that a kid has when it comes to their sports experience is when I call it the backseat prisoner. This is when the competition's over, maybe they lost or didn't play well, and now they're in the back seat and they're going home, and mom and dad, or maybe both, are laying into them about, you should have done this, and I don't know why you do this, and you should have passed it, or maybe you're ragging on someone else, like the officials did this, and your coach is stupid. So you have to be really careful. I have a little 24-hour rule that I tend to tell parents not to talk to their kids about the results for at least 24 hours. The next thing is, what kind of person are you becoming because of your tennis? This is a really dangerous but in-depth and deep question. We often ask this. The more serious you are about your tennis, the more time you put into it, the more it affects you as a person. Now, there's two ways that this can go. And I will challenge kids, even 12, 13 years old, what kind of person are you becoming because of your involvement in tennis? Is it more balanced? Is it more disciplined? Are you more goal-oriented, better at delayed gratification? Or are you a person that's more agitated, angry, ticked off, and a pain to be around? So that's the question that we ask kids. You can ask yourself that as a parent. What kind of parent or what kind of person are you because of your kid's sports involvement? The last thing here is two questions. I'm going to just leave you with two tips. The two questions I ran past my daughter every time, it's the only thing I ever mentioned to her after a match, and she had to answer yes, is, how did you compete? Did you fight like a dog? And secondly, did you represent yourself and the family well? Those are the only two questions I really cared about, because if she said yes to those, we were off to a restaurant, we had a good night. Those two things, by definition, are within her control. I would not hold your kid responsible for wins and losses. Those are not within their control. But how your kid behaves and how hard they try is, and that's a good thing. That two-question little example is a great way to kind of have a good family life there with your sports. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is the 6 words that kids love to hear the most. Maybe you speak these often, maybe you never have, but I'll tell you what they are. Son or daughter, I love to watch you play. I love to watch you play. The 6 most powerful words you can say to a child. And you know who says it the most? Grandparents. So please, I hope you take this video and put it to good use. A lot of parents really want education on this. Some parents are already knocking it out of the park and they're really good at this. Some parents struggle with this, but they've never been taught. So that's my intention, is to give you some tips on how to watch your kids so that you and your child can have a better performance and a better time as they compete.